Ujambo. This is Amma Robin, your host at Espresso Talk Today, where we confront the chaos of living Black in predominantly white spaces. I'm having my curcuma coffee today for this informative and powerful show. Today, you see, we are exploring the profound significance of Black spaces, those sanctuaries of safety, affirmation, and empowerment that serve as counterpoints to the chaos of predominantly white spaces. Now, before we dive in, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and if you're feeling this show, and I really hope you are, share it with your fam, your crew, your circle, everyone in your community. And I hope that you'll sit back and enjoy it just right now. So grab that espresso or tea. Tea drinkers are absolutely welcome here too. And close that door behind you. We're going to get deep and we're going to get real. And I hope that y'all are ready for this. Aquaba, my dear brothers and sisters and beloved gender-neutral and gender-nonconforming folks, I am so glad that you're here with me today. In previous episodes, we have unpacked the relentless chaos of living Black in white spaces. We've talked about the microaggressions, the police violence, the voter suppression, the exhausting hypervigilance that takes a toll on our health and well-being. It is a reality where we often feel like unwelcome guests in spaces that were not designed with us in mind. Now, one thing I said is that we confront the chaos of living Black in predominantly white spaces, but we also learn how to contain and to calm that chaos. So what can we do about this chaos of white spaces? Now, this is going to get a little bit controversial, so I hope that y'all will stick with me and give me some space to explain myself and to hear me out, because this is important, it's controversial, and frankly, it's radical, and I think it's courageous. We can spend more time in Black spaces. We can spend more time in our culture, in our community, and we can spend more time in spaces that are controlled by Black people, that are owned by Black people, and that are predominantly where we are the predominant people, where we are centered. So people ask me this a lot, and that's cool. What exactly are Black-owned spaces or Black spaces? It's not complicated, but it's also not simple either. And I'm going to show you how in a minute. But let's look at establishments such as restaurants and cafes, gathering places where community members can enjoy cuisine rooted in Black cultural traditions, fostering a sense of belonging and pride. And I think about that sometimes. When I'm with my mother, we go out. My mother is a very proud 82 years old. And we go out to a restaurant, and a Black restaurant, and they treat her like the queen she is, like a super queen. Everything is, yes, ma'am. Of course, ma'am. Whatever you like, ma'am. And they pull out the seat for her. They take such good care of her. She is the queen at the table, the queen of the room, and they treat her like that. And we go to other spaces, and it's just like, okay, yeah, you can sit there. Or they don't acknowledge her status as an elder in our community. Okay, so restaurants and cafes, another place, boutiques and shops, retail spaces that showcase and celebrate Black fashion, art, craftsmanship, promoting economic empowerment and cultural expression right in our community. Now, I've talked a whole lot about when I go to department stores and all of a sudden I'm looking around and I keep bumping into the security guard. Or I can see people watching me closely. Or remember that time that they wouldn't help me at the counter. They waited for actually a person of color to free up one of the other cashiers to become available. And they made everybody wait, in fact, until she could help me. See, that kind of stuff doesn't happen in Black boutiques or Black controlled spaces. I don't have to worry about that kind of stuff. And another place are cultural centers, hubs of learning and creativity that host events, workshops, and exhibits. But it's not just what we do there. It's actually, or how we're treated even. It's actually the feeling of walking into these spaces and feeling that you belong, feeling that you're at home, that you're welcome, that your presence is not just tolerated because legally it has to be, but because they're just happy you're there, and you feel happy you're there, and it's just a mutual feeling. And these spaces are really not just, as I said, just places of commerce. Commerce is extremely important in our community, and I'll never, reject that. But they are also dynamic hubs of creativity, innovation, and cultural affirmation. They provide the platforms for Black artists and entrepreneurs and visionaries to thrive and to contribute to their communities. But I'm going to say this too. These spaces are not just always physical spaces. Okay, bear with me here. I consider Black history to be a Black space. I consider Black art as a Black space. I consider Black music as a Black space. Hip hop and jazz, those are Black spaces to me. Black history is a black space to me. As I said, I'm an historian, and when I'm reading Black history, and some of it isn't always pretty, I'm feeling at home. I'm getting it. I understand. I'm connecting with it, because that is a space where I belong. I'm welcomed. I fit in, and I feel safe there. I feel understood. These spaces are spaces where we can breathe, where we can feel like we are, welcomed, that we belong. And that's just an amazing sense of belonging. These are spaces where we don't have to wear the mask. As Paul Laurence Dunbar, wrote in his amazing poem about wearing the mask. I wish I had it here with me, or I would read part of it. I've read it before on the show, and it's just really nails it. Or that space where we don't experience that double consciousness that W.E.B. Du Bois talks about. We can just be ourselves. We can just relax and revel in our humanness. And that is an incredible experience. And I know that you've had it, and I've talked about it in many different ways. But perhaps, and maybe even most importantly, Black spaces are sites of resistance and liberation. This is where a lot of it began. People sitting around talking together in groups, over a nice meal, and talking about how, we're not taking this, where they kick us off a bus if we won't move, for a white person to sit down. Or places where we get together and we talk about, yes, I have my skills, you have yours. We can put that together and create a business that's going to help our community. Or we can raise money to support a cause that's important in our community. Or we can all get together and go down to march about police violence. Or we could get together and decide, this is a person that we want to support in the Senate because they hear us, they see us, they center us. And there's spaces where in Black people and communities we can assert our identity. We can reclaim our power. And we can envision a future where systemic inequalities are dismantled. There's the liberation. It's not reformed, it's dismantled. And Black lives truly do matter in those spaces. They serve as catalysts for collective action and fostering solidarity and resilience. for justice and equality. Yeah, they're all of those things. And as I said, they're not always physical spaces. Yes, some will be online, some are virtual. Yes, that's true. But often they are a soul space. You know it when you're there. You feel it. You're immersed in it. You may not even go seeking it out, but all of a sudden you know that you're there. And that is an amazing feeling. And that is the power of Black spaces. But you may be asking, though, why are Black spaces so important? I mean, besides that, didn't we stop needing those spaces when segregation was declared unconstitutional? When we could actually start integrating into the full mainstream society, didn't we stop needing Black spaces? Well, I am so glad you asked me that. But, before I answer it, let's take a first breather break. This gives both of us, all of us, a chance to breathe for a minute because, before we dive into any deeper, I think it is a good time to relax and hear our minds, to process this information. And breathing helps with that. When we talk about whether we still need Black spaces, we really got to delve into that. So I'm going to see you in a minute, and I hope that y'all are ready for this.
Yeah. Trying to get a lot of dough and dirt through all the obstacles, cause anything is possible. Yeah. Oh man, I got a lot of goals. Stack that bread and by my nose. Anything is possible. Yeah. Trying to get a lot of dough and dirt through all the obstacles, cause anything is possible. Hey. Oh man, I got a lot of goals. Stack that bread and by my nose.
Asante sana for staying with me. I hope that y'all did a little bit of breathing or whatever you need to do to relax. I did, and I'm ready to get back to it. So, are Black spaces still important? Segregation is gone. Integration is the thing. Assimilation is big. We can go anywhere, do anything. Do we still need Black spaces? My answer to that is a resounding yes. Black spaces are still important, perhaps even more important now, because we're dealing with even more of the chaos of being Black in predominantly white spaces. Yeah, now we're dealing with that. And so Black spaces begin to serve as our sanctuaries. Yeah, sure, we go to an office where there may be one or two other Black people, and maybe we're okay, maybe we feel fine, but the spaces that we go to after work or at lunch or at other times, or when you're maybe with that other Black person or whatever, those are sanctuaries. And they're spaces also of resilience, as I said before, and liberation. Those are spaces where we can truly belong. Now, what happens when we're in these other spaces? Well, this chaos creates hypervigilance. It creates, a stress response that lasts for as long as the stressor you're in with the stressor. You're exposed to the stressor. That can be all day. That can be hours. That can be weeks, years, lifetime. And we know that has an effect on our health. We know that our rates of heart disease and hypertension and cardiovascular illness and cancer and depression and anxiety are off the charts. They should not be. But they are because these are stress responses. These are stress responses to the chaos of living as a Black person in a predominantly white space. It's reaction to the microaggressions or even the threat of microaggressions. It's reaction to the profiling or even the threat of profiling. Reaction to the violence or the threat of violence. Reaction to the stereotypes or the threat of stereotypes. I guess you get my point. Even the threat. Nothing really has to happen, but the threat is always looming. And that threat can cause the stress response that can affect, and it does affect, our health, our mental health, our physical health, and our well-being. But Black spaces remind us that we belong, that we matter, that we're important. They uplift us. They fill us up. They welcome us in. They embrace us. And they remind us of the resilience of our ancestors. Our ancestors built thriving communities, and our ancestors who were newly freed built thriving communities. They had the church and their businesses that were really doing great. They had their homes and their families and their schools, and they were doing great. Many of those are still around, and that's a wonderful thing. And I actually have a list of those on the website if you want to go read about them. But some of those, as you probably know, particularly like Black Wall Street, but that's not the only one, was attacked, was destroyed, and the people were massacred. The white population could not take it. They would not take it. They would not allow Black people to have that kind of space and to have that kind of success. But our ancestors worked hard to build those kind of places so that they would be around for us. And these spaces still are important to us. They may have transformed and changed, but they're still around for us and we still need them. And here are some examples of some Black spaces. Let me think. Okay, there are Black-owned restaurants and cafes. When I go to Sylvia's in New York, in Harlem in New York, oh my gosh. Okay, and it's not just the fried chicken. It is that Sylvia welcomes you at the door, and welcomes my mother. Treats my mother like the elder queen she is. The Black-owned bookstores like Marcus Books from my hometown in Oakland, still there. And you go there and you can talk to the people about the books and they'll talk with you about it, and you just connect because this is a space, this is a sacred space, and you feel it, and you go there and you belong. And then of course there's the HBCUs, the historically Black colleges and universities. I wish more than anything that I would have attended one of those. I went to a predominantly white school. I went to UCLA, and then I went on to University of Pennsylvania Law School. And, I learned a lot, but what I never felt was any connection. I didn't feel embraced. I didn't sit there and have a Black professor and be surrounded with Black students who all just wanted me to do well, who saw me as human, who saw me as worthy, who felt that I matter, that they didn't just see me as someone who was sitting in a space that should have rightfully belonged to a white student. So HBCUs are spaces where you get a fantastic education, but you also become a part of a community. You are embraced by a community. So I hope that I've kind of given some examples of how and why Black spaces are still so important to us. Another kind of Black space, and this is one that personally touches me, the others do too, but this one as well, my sister group. And that's spelled SISTAH. They are my sister group. These are a group of Black women that I can talk with, laugh with, cry with, rant with, and they get it. They understand, they welcome it, they embrace it, and they embrace me. And this is a Black space that is so important to me and so necessary for me. And they love me, I love them. And we get it, we understand each other because we kind of are each other. So Black spaces do not have to be just a physical space, a bookstore. I love bookstores, nothing against them. But they are places and spaces like with your family, like with your sisters, with your good friends, with your brothers. They are spaces like when you're reading about your history, or you're listening to hip hop, or you're listening to jazz, or, okay, this is a reach here, or you're wearing some clothes that just make you, that are part of your culture, or you have your hair in locks, because they're part of your culture, and you just feel embraced and welcomed into a community that also, respects and values that too. Supporting these spaces and protecting these spaces, I'm going to get to that in a minute. They aren't about segregation or exclusion. They're about creating havens where we feel safe, where we feel seen, and where we feel celebrated. It's about investing in environments that uplift and center Black voices and Black people. It's about spaces that challenge the status quo that often gets sidelined in our experiences. We get decentered real easy in the chaos of the predominantly white spaces. In the Black spaces, we are the center of the universe. And it is an amazing feeling that should never be missed or undervalued. We are going to take another breather break here. I'm just feeling so excited. I'm going to need some time to breathe. Why don't you take time to think, to stretch, to breathe, to do push-ups, grab some coffee or tea, whatever speaks to your soul. This is some great stuff here, but everyone needs a break. I'll see you in a minute.
Turn me up in the headphone. Yeah. Grind to get a lot of dough and dirt through all the obstacles, cause anything is possible. Yeah. Oh man, I got a lot of goals. Stack that bread and by my nose. Anything is possible. Yeah. Grind to get a lot of dough and dirt through all the obstacles, cause anything is possible. Hey. Oh man, I got a lot of goals. Stack that bread and by my nose.
I'm back. We're back. And thanks for showing the courage to stay in the building and discuss this controversial topic. Let's get a little bit deeper here too, because some of it isn't always great. Yes, like any family, Black spaces have their challenges. Sometimes they don't have the resources and the opportunities that we need. Sometimes personalities are difficult and they cause conflicts. There are other problems that happen in Black spaces. These internal conflicts, there can be internal disagreements, power struggles, or conflicts that can impact the cohesion and effectiveness of the group. That can happen from at an HBCU, that could happen at Morehouse, that could happen with my sister group. Fortunately, it has not. But if it did, I think it's important enough that we would deal with it. There are resource constraints, and this happens a lot with the HBCUs. That's why I constantly say we've got to do something to support our HBCUs, because we know the federal government and even the state governments are not doing it. But when we have extra money, we can donate and support our HBCUs. Because there's limited funding, there's limited financial support, and there's limited access to capital, and that can hinder the growth and sustainability of Black spaces, of cultural centers, businesses, and community initiatives. And then there's the big G. Yes, that's right, gentrification. The process of gentrification often displaces long-standing Black residents and businesses from their neighborhoods, and this erodes the cultural and social fabric and power of Black communities. This dilutes the power, economic and political power of Black communities, as well as taking away, diluting the culture and decentering the culture. But they also provide. But there are other problems too, other difficulties too in Black spaces. But they do provide a refuge from the unpredictable and the uncontrollable chaos of predominantly white spaces. So let's address the elephant in the room now. Yes, that's right. Maybe I should just call it the white elephant in the room now. Why do white people feel so threatened by Black spaces? And why do they feel so threatened in black spaces? White discomfort and feelings of threat in black spaces often come from the deep-seated fears of losing their control or losing their privilege in environments where they are not the majority. I went to Senegal a few years ago, and I actually went with a white friend and her son. And that was difficult for me. I'm in Senegal and just marveling and enjoying and feeling the energy of being in a black country, of being around black people. And they were looking around terrified, like, oh my gosh, wow, what if these people all turn on me? What's going to happen to me? Am I unsafe? They were just complaining the whole time about it. What they basically should have said was, you know what? I'm not the majority here. I'm not privileged, and I don't like that. But of course, they didn't go that deep. These people were from Arkansas. They didn't go that deep. But they did feel the discomfort. I didn't feel it. Historically, white supremacy has ingrained the belief that spaces should cater to and prioritize white comfort and white dominance. When confronted with black autonomy and solidarity, many white people may perceive it as exclusionary or hostile, despite the fact that these spaces simply exist as affirmations of black identity and black community. It's crucial, it's really important to recognize that discomfort in those contexts reflects a broader societal dynamic, where systemic racism perpetuates unequal power dynamics and those norms that prioritize whiteness. This is why they feel so uncomfortable. This is why there's that book. Why are all the black students sitting in the cafeteria, sitting together at the cafeteria? That's why people get very uncomfortable with that. And they wonder, are they plotting against me? It's sad to think that. And of course, not all white people feel that way. But if you do feel that discomfort or that you feel unsafe, even though people are just going about their business, then maybe, and I say this to my allies, maybe consider how you have been socialized to want to be centered and safe. And, well, everybody wants to be centered and safe, but how you want to be the center and the privileged ones in that community. I have been told many times by white people that, oh, it's dangerous there. Stay away from that place. I was once in Paris, and I was decided to go to this black area in Paris, just kind of a little bit near the Sacré-Cœur. And I was told, oh, stay away from there because it's very, very dangerous. And I said, but I haven't heard of anything. What's happened? Oh, it's very dangerous. Now, whenever they say that, that is buzzword for it is not white. It is a place of black and brown people. Anyway, I went there, and it was an amazing experience. There were markets going on, the fantastic food. There were great smells around, and people were going about their business. Never, never, never unsafe. And I never felt that it was a problem. Not at all. But I did go back to the Musée d'Orsay, and my passport was stolen. Well, there you go. We cannot disregard the white fear of black spaces, though. We can't disregard, as much as I want to ignore it and just say, well, look, that's their own problem. We can't disregard it because they will cause a problem. During slavery, black people could not walk in groups. White people have destroyed thriving black communities, as I said before. Gentrification has taken away many black communities. And when white people feel uncomfortable in some of these or near some of these black spaces, they go in and they will destroy it. They will dilute it. They'll gentrify it. They will defund it. They'll do what they need to so that they feel comfortable. So that's why we just can't ignore what they're going through. As much as, it's really not a legitimate feeling. we know the history shows what can happen. They've attacked black businesses and organizations like the Black Panther Party that was simply handing out, lunches before school to kids. The great work that they were doing, they thought it was better to go in there and break up that group. They also take away black holidays like Juneteenth. Yeah. Juneteenth still exists. Now it's even a federal holiday. I've always celebrated Juneteenth like forever. But now that Juneteenth is a federal holiday, it's feeling a little bit less black to me. And I think as the years go by, it may start feeling even less and less black, less and less focused on emancipation and liberation and promises that were made to the newly freed people and unfulfilled promises that are still out there. And the 40 acres and a mule and that was promised to us that was not given, and reparations that are still owed. Those things will get wiped away, unless we fight for them and protect that space. They change the narrative of black history, and they inferiorize our black leaders who are doing great work for us. White fear of black spaces is real and dangerous to black spaces and to black people. So what can we do? What can we do to protect ourselves against white fear of black spaces? Hope you have some thoughts. But right now we are going to take one last breather break. And then we're going to wind it down. And I got some information I think you're going to want to know. We are going to talk about protecting black spaces, how to protect black spaces. And I know that y'all are ready for this. Jumbo, y'all, and Asante Sana for staying in the building with me, because we're about to go deep into something that's really important: protecting black spaces. And yes, it's a shame that, the black spaces we're talking about are places of affirmation and identity and community that should be uplifted and celebrated, but they often do cause fear in the dominant culture, dominant white Western culture. And protecting black spaces from white fear and attacks requires a multifaceted, on many different levels, approach that addresses systemic racism and promotes community empowerment. Here are just a few things that I have, and I'd love to hear yours, because, as I said, this requires action on many different fronts. My first one is, community organizing and solidarity. For me, it really kind of always comes down to that, after awareness. Of course, awareness that the threat is there. Community organizing and solidarity. Foster strong community bonds and alliances among black residences and black businesses and organizations to promote collective safety and resilience against external threats. There's a lot to unpack in that one, but we have to also recognize what is an external threat. Because as they say, all skin folk ain't kinfolk. Just because they are a black person does not mean they're on your side. It does not mean they're supporting your community. So we have to look at what people do and listen to what they say and decide if they are, what side they are really on. Another one is really to be an advocate for policy changes. Advocate for policies and legislation that protect black-owned businesses and cultural institutions from discriminatory practices, from gentrification, and from racial profiling. We actually are a very strong community economically and financially, and we can use some of our financial and economic resources to protect and support our black-owned businesses and our black-controlled organizations and are predominantly black HBCUs. So we have the power. We just have to use it. Well, now there's the going after the media. I brought this up before about changing the narrative and protecting the narrative. We have to challenge negative stereotypes and misrepresentations of black spaces in the media and public discourse. I see it all the time, and it is just accepted that the media is just reporting what's there. They're not. They are creating images in our minds that many of us will never get rid of in our lifetimes. But we have to fight against it. Because, as I was told in Paris, they say, don't go there. Nope, nope, nope. You will not be safe. But they didn't warn me against protecting my passport by the Musée d'Orsay, which is actually supposed to be a very posh kind of area. But when I went to the black community there, one thing I found great things there. Like I said, I found great stores and restaurants and bars and cafes and businesses and people and families and food. What I didn't find was a bank. I did not find a bank. And our communities are routinely underbanked or even unbanked. And when that happens, then a lot of commerce cannot happen. So we have to make sure that our communities are resourced. And the media doesn't go in and talk about how, wow, there's no bank here. They just go in and talk about how, oh my gosh, look, there's a broken window there. Look, this is a dangerous place. Let's change that narrative. Let's reject that narrative. Because we have to realize they're creating the stereotypes. And they're creating and damaging, our communities. Now, this last one here is one of my favorites. Crisis response planning. We can develop and implement crisis response plans that outline protocols for addressing emergencies, incidents of violence, or threats to black spaces. And these can ensure swift and effective action to safeguard community members and assets. Yeah, because there are external threats of violence from police and violence from other communities, other ethnic communities that don't want to see black communities thrive. We can develop a crisis response plan that prevents it, that stops this from happening. I wonder if this would have been made a difference in Black Wall Street. But we can learn from the past, not any mistakes. We can learn from the past, and we can see what we can do to protect our communities, and then be there for that, just like they did to the MOVE community and organization, actually bombing children and bombing people who had not hurt anybody. I wish there had been a rapid response for us to protect them. So by taking some of these, I don't know if you remember all that. That was in Philadelphia back in, I think it was 1989. I happened to be living there at the time, going to school. So it was terrible to see. But we also know the stories of other communities that have been attacked from the outside, from outside organizations, from the FBI, from, yes, federal law enforcement. So by taking these steps to proactively to address systemic inequalities, to build community resilience and promote inclusivity and safety, we can work towards protecting and preserving black spaces, because they are incredibly important sanctuaries of culture, community, and empowerment. And nothing beats that sense of belonging. So as we do move forward, let's uplift Black-owned, Black-controlled, and predominantly Black spaces. Let's ensure they're properly resourced and protected. Let's ensure that they are fostering environments where we and everyone else too, can thrive and belong. So I think I'm going to stop there, because I've rattled on for a while here about Black spaces. I don't know if I've convinced you. I just want to say my piece on that, because I know when I have been in Black spaces, I have felt that peace and that belonging. And I just want everyone to recognize that that is what it is. No matter what the media says or how it portrays those spaces, it's a place of belonging, and it is a sanctuary. Now join me. I hope you will join me next time as we continue to explore the intersections of Black empowerment and liberation. And until then, remember that our voices do matter, our stories do matter, and our spaces do matter. Asante Sana for being a part of the Espresso Talk Today community. I look forward to continuing these important and uncommon conversations with you as we envision liberation for all peoples, not for some, but for everyone. Asante Sana to all people working for the liberation of all oppressed people and oppressed communities, and we stand in solidarity with you. And so remember, my fellow warriors, know this deep in your soul. You are powerful beyond measure, and together we are invincible. And the real problem with society is white supremacy, is anti-Black racism. Black people are not the problem. Black spaces are not the problem. Racism, systemic racism, is the problem. If you want to keep discussing or just reading about these issues, then you should definitely subscribe to my weekly Black Empowerment newsletter, The No More Beat. We discuss lots of different issues there, so you can get your dose of Black empowerment and liberation every week. Never a dull moment, lots of powerful, uplifting, and liberating moments, though. You can subscribe at the Espresso Talk Today website at espressotalktoday.com or on Instagram at let me start that again, at Ama Robin L. That's Ama, AMA, _ Robin, ROBIN, _ the letter L. You can also find me on Facebook in my newly opened Espresso Talk Today Black Liberation Lounge. This group is a safe space for us to hold discussions, to share thoughts and ideas, to feel joy, to express sadness, or to just breathe. You can also join me on Instagram, where I hold a live discussion every single week. So DM me to get the weekly schedule and the topics. Again, join me on Instagram at Ama Robin L. I'm Ama Robin for Espresso Talk Today. And remember, now more than ever, strength, soul, and reparations. Ashe, fam.